Does this cave in Nevada bear witness to the real existence of giants? According to the traditions of the indigenous Paiute, something almost unbelievable once took place in Lovelock Cave that we actually only know in this form from fantastic mythologies. Nonetheless, the mysterious cave world is said to have actually provided the final setting for the decisive battle between humans and giants. At this point, it would be easy to simply dismiss the adventurous tales of all the giant creatures as fictitious legends, but there is a problem. In fact, some archaeological reports state that not only unusually large artifacts were recovered in Lovelock Cave, but also the mummified remains of a creature that was over 3 meters tall. Located in the western United States, the state of Nevada is best known for its many deserts, the legendary Death Valley, and of course, the gambling mecca of Las Vegas. But the Silver State has another attraction of a somewhat different kind in store, a cave that has the potential to overturn everything we think we know about the creatures of the past in one fell swoop. But to understand what this exciting claim is all about, we have to turn back the wheel of time to 1882 and take a look at the book published by a certain Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins at the time. In detail, Hopkins was not just any writer. She was the daughter of a Paiute chief who put the collective memories of her tribe on paper in Life Among the Paiutes, Their Wrongs and Claims. The fact that the history of the Paiute, who still live in the Great Basin in the western United States, is not a list of humdrum events becomes clear when we look at what Hopkins had to say about the CTK. According to oral tradition, they were a race of gigantic creatures with fiery red hair whose nature perfectly matched their fearsome appearance. These giants were not only considered extremely brutal and malicious, but were also said to have a tendency to devour each other from time to time. The translation of the name CTK or Saduka shows that the giants' diet included not only their own kind. The name means something like tool eater and refers to a fibrous aquatic plant known to botanists as Schoenplectus acutus. However, the CTK used this plant not only to satisfy their hunger, but also to build rafts to escape the attacks of the Paiute. Furthermore, tradition has it that after years of fighting, the Paiute joined forces and united all the tribes in the area to deal the CTK the decisive blow. And one day, as the tribal warriors pursued the last remaining giants, they sought refuge in a cave. The Paiute then called on the CTK to come out into the open. But when the giants refused, the Paiute built a large fire at the entrance to the cave and simultaneously rained down a hail of arrows into the cave. The giants who were not pierced by the arrows suffocated or burned to death, and ultimately the cave entrance collapsed, transforming the rock world into an inaccessible place that could henceforth only be entered by bats and other small animals. It's not particularly surprising that the corresponding Lovelock Cave is also called Bat Cave, especially in light of this. The cave, which is located about 30 kilometers south of the town of Lovelock, is also known as Sunset Guano Cave, Horseshoe Cave, and Loud Site 18. At 46 meters long and 11 meters wide, Lovelock Cave has a long history. It existed before the human settlement of the American continent and was once located under Lake Lohontan. The cave was officially discovered in 1911 by 2 miners, although legend has it that mining engineer John T. Reed had heard of the cave 25 years earlier. He was then led to Lovelock Cave by some Paiute, but he did not succeed in arranging an archaeological excavation. The miners David Pugh and James Hart had a little more luck, but the men were not looking for giants when they ventured into the isolated cave world, but rather bat guano. This is nothing more than bat excrement, which is considered a valuable fertilizer due to its high nitrogen content. Soon after, Pugh and Hart were not only in possession of a whopping 250 tons of bat guano, but also a number of ancient artifacts. Unfortunately, however, in retrospect, the miners cannot be said to have taken the necessary care. While they removed a layer of guano up to 1.8 meters deep as part of their work, they simply tipped it into a large heap outside the cave. More than a few testimonies of the past may have been irrevocably destroyed in the process. But let's be clear, Pugh and Hart did know about the archaeological treasures slumbering in Lovelock Cave, but they only saved the ones that were most interesting to them personally. While the first, well, should we say, excavation was anything but systematic and careful, the anthropologist Alfred Lewis Kroeber tried to rectify the mess his predecessors had made the following year. In detail, Kroeber commissioned a certain L.L. Loud to expertly examine Lovelock Cave, and he was successful. Loud's team spent 5 months digging in the cave and unearthed around 10,000 pieces of material. Unfortunately, however, the standards of archaeological excavations at that time did not yet correspond to today's, and Loud did not bother to create an overarching grid system or to prepare a comprehensive report on the excavation. As a result, we do not have any further information about the first professional investigation of the cave. Fortunately, the situation is somewhat different in the case of the 1924 excavation. 12 years after his first foray into the cave, Loud returned to the site. This time, the historical search for clues was carried out with the help of Mark Raymond Harrington and some Paiute, and it was to bring amazing things to light. Among other things, Loud's team tracked down tools, bones, baskets, weapons, and last but not least, some duck decoys. Incidentally, these artifacts, which take the form of cackling waterfowl, are among the oldest known duck decoys in existence. But just how old are we talking about here? Well, a later radiocarbon dating of plant remains was able to date the corresponding material to around 2030 BC. A human thigh bone found here, on the other hand, dates back to 1450 BC, while the human muscle tissue is about 30 years younger. In combination with the wickerwork from 1218 BC, the experts concluded that human settlement of Lovelock Cave may have begun around 1500 BC. Many researchers believe the so-called Lovelock culture lasted up to 3,000 years and was later replaced by the northern Paiute. But the former cave dwellers also left us a few confusing objects, as the following shows. For while the experts found 60 normal-sized mummies here, they also discovered a sandal over 38 centimeters long. The remains of giants? There is no question that the wearer of the sandal literally lived life on a large foot. After all, the length of the sandal corresponds to a shoe size of 59. And yet the strange footwear is not the only thing that seems to feed the legend of giants, because there are actually rumors that not only normal-sized bodies were recovered during the excavations, but also the mummies of a woman of almost 2 meters and a man of 2.5 meters, both with flaming red hair. However, since there is no tangible evidence for these finds, they do not go beyond the status of mere assertion. But what about Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins' book? Surely she described the giants in it in every conceivable detail. Well, not quite. In fact, Hopkins only spoke of barbarians in her work, and it is possible that the story has taken on a life of its own over time and been embellished. As for the red hair, skeptical experts point out that the hair only turned red after the burial due to chemical reactions. Added to this is the fact that a study conducted at the University of Nevada concluded that the alleged giants were actually only 1.83 meters tall and not, as claimed, 2.45 meters. So, has the myth of the giants finally been debunked? Well, not for everyone. For some, the discovery of the 38-centimeter sandal alone proves the Paiute story is true. And then there's the article published in the Nevada Review Minor in 1931, which reports on 2 very large skeletons found in the Humboldt Sink near the town of Lovelock. One skeleton was said to be 2.5 meters tall and wrapped in a rubber-coated fabric. The other is said to have reached a height of 3.5 meters. What happened to the XXL skeletons afterwards and whether they really ever existed is another matter entirely. Further evidence for the real existence of the Lovelock giants is said to be a series of pictures found on a stone block in the cave. In detail, we see a handprint that is more than twice the size of a normal human hand. And who knows, maybe the trail of the giants can even be traced back to the Peruvian-Bolivian border. It is said that unusually large skulls, adorned with reddish hair, were once found near Lake Titicaca. However, visitors to the small Natural History Museum in Winnemucca, Nevada, will search in vain for giant heads among the Lovelock artifacts. The same applies to the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C., But at least here, visitors are rewarded with a sight of the aforementioned duck decoys. And while the basketry and bones are kept at the Nevada State Museum, the question arises as to how we should ultimately evaluate the history of Lovelock Cave. On the one hand, it can be said that the background to the cave narrative cannot be deciphered with absolute certainty. There is simply no clear evidence to support the former existence of gigantic creatures. And yet, the cave shows in the same breath that the indigenous legend ultimately had a kernel of truth. After all, we now know that the Lovelock Cave, which the Paiute have been telling each other about for generations, and which was unknown to the rest of the world for so long, actually exists. And now there is nothing left for you to do but click the like and subscribe buttons. We'd love for you to join our community so you never miss another exciting video from us.